What's up, guys? Today we're talking about the one pump Rafa build. This is the build that I've been running on my live streams, and this is the build that got me through pretty much all my endgame content on Rafa. If you don't know what the one pump build is, it's pretty much centered around first shot damage and single mag weapons. It's super good, does not rely on a crazy amount of setup or any kind of busted glitches or anything like that. I have literally zero clue who could have came up with this before me. I don't really watch other videos on builds, and I don't expect to be the first one that came up with this build by any means, but I just kind of was looking through his skills, came up with his build in around 10 minutes or so on stream, just messing around with stuff. It ended up being absolutely busted, so I figured I'd showcase it here for you guys. Just jumping straight into the build, the main thing you're going to want to go with are his Peacebreaker cannons. These Peacebreaker cannons are going to be a huge help to you, and most of these skills are going to kind of be down into the Peacebreaker cannon skill tree. So we're just going to start there. I'm going to go over each skill really quick. I'm not going to get too much into, you know, every little detail that every little skill has, but essentially we're going to start off with CTR. Also, I'm probably going to butcher the fuck out of some of these names, so just be prepared for that. We're going to get 5 hits of that, which is just going to give us a flat 25% increased gun damage. Really mean. Getting straight into the skill underneath it, which is Huerga, or however the fuck you say that shit. Whenever we critically hit an enemy, action skill duration is restored. This also counts for the cannons themselves, so if your cannons are getting crits, they are going to restore their own cooldown. If you are getting crits, you're going to restore your cannons cooldown. If your ordinance is getting crits, literally any form of crits is going to give you action skill cooldown, which is really nice. Or not cooldown, sorry, duration. So while your action skill's already popped, it's going to continue to go for even longer. That's really nice. And then right next to that, we're going to get into Instinto, or however you say this. Again, I'm going to butcher these, which this is essentially just increased critical hit chance for your cannons, and if you press F while your cannons are active, it causes them to gain critical hit chance and critical hit damage, also causing his action skill to drain faster. But again, with the skill right next to it, we're going to be getting way more action skill back than we are going to be losing, so it's totally fine. As well as this is also going to give you a kill skill, where anytime you kill an enemy, this is going to give you action skill duration back as well. Then we're going to take 3 hits of Maestro right under that, which is just a flat skill damage increase, as well as over to the right, El Valentine, or Valentine, however you want to say this. Rafa deals increased damage from all sources. The fuller my shields are, the greater the bonus. While Rafa shields are at maximum capacity, double the bonus. So if you have full shields, you're doing a ton of extra damage. This is pretty much just another flat damage increase that you're going to have up most of the time. Then getting into the kind of middle tree here, you're going to take 5 hits of Vitriol, or however you say this. This is just going to give your first shot out of your mag bonus corrosive damage by 55%. That's going to be really big, helping you with any of the armored enemies. And again, this is focusing around the first shot of the mag, so that's going to boost your first shot by a ton. Into the next tree right next to that, we're going to go for Barrage, 5 hits of that, which is just going to give us an overdrive skill that increases our splash damage while overdrive is active. And for those of you that might not know, overdrive is literally just a skill that's constantly going while your action skill is going. So as long as our turrets are out on our shields shooting stuff, we are going to have overdrive. Then we're going to take 5 hits of whatever this skill is, not saying that, which is another overdrive skill that literally just gives us flat gun damage, but decreases gun handling, which means you're going to have slightly worse recoil and stuff like that, but you're going to get way more damage, and I promise you it's worth it. And you gain a stack of this for every second that overdrive is active, which means while your action skill is active, the longer you get this to go for, the more damage you're going to do. So it can get up to some crazy numbers, guys. Your max stacks is 10, which means you're essentially dealing double damage. It's disgusting. And then we're also taking your 1 hit of Saltado, or however you want to say this, which is just a kill skill that doubles all overdrive bonuses. So when you kill an enemy, this is going to double your overdrive bonuses. And you might see that I have 2 out of 1. This is just from our class mod, so that's a really good thing. If you can get a class mod that specs into that, cool. Same with this, 9 out of 5, we're getting 4 from our class mod. And then as your capstone, you're going to take Volatile Hollow Points, which is going to replace your cannons with rockets that deal splash damage. So this is really nice too. This also helps you take out some of those volatile enemies. So when they have those crystals growing all over them, your rockets will deal a lot of splash damage and area of effect damage to those enemies and break their crystals really fast for you, so you don't have to worry about shooting the crystals specifically. And then getting into blue tree, there's no green tree in this build, it's strictly red and blue. You're going to take 5 hits of Rinse, which is just going to give you a flat reload speed increase. Then you're going to go down and take a hit of Preparado. This is just going to give you action skill cooldown every time you reload. And straight to the right of that, on the same level in the tree, you're going to grab Arriba, which is going to give you a kill skill. Whenever Rafa kills an enemy, he gains increased ordnance cooldown rate for a duration. This is just going to give you your grenade back or whatever ordinance you're running. Me personally, I'm running the knife that took me literally 15 hours to farm, brother. Don't even get me started on that. And then going down in the skill tree further, you're going to run First Impression, which is literally the first shot fired from a fully loaded magazine gains increased damage up to 50%. 50%. So just between that and the other corrosive damage skill in the red tree that's practically identical, you are dealing 105% bonus damage, both in the form of your just straight up kinetic gun damage and that extra 55% corrosive damage. So that's already a ton of extra damage just on the first shot alone. And then we're going to take 2 hits of El Soldado, which is essentially going to give you increased gun damage while overdrive is active. This bonus is doubled while Rafa is charging Apophis Lance. We don't care about the Apophis Lance part, obviously, but we get a flat 12% damage buff, which is of course doubled due to that other skill in the red tree. And all in all, that's pretty much all of your skill points. I'm sure you maybe could min-max this a little bit better for damage if you tried, but overall this is about as good as it's really going to get. Getting over into the items that you're mostly going to want to use with the build, the main one I would recommend is the Hot Slugger. Now this will work with pretty much any Jacobs that has a single shot, even something like this purple Jacobs shotgun here. This still does a busted amount of damage just because it's a single shot Jacob, so you're getting all that damage stacked on that first round. Something like this will still do great, but of course we all know the Hot Slugger is pretty meta right now, so it absolutely claps with this build. You're going to be one-tapping practically everything. Even a lot of the bigger badass enemies on the harder difficulties you can kill within 2 or 3 hits, especially if you're mixing it with something like the guaranteed crit knife. You're hitting them with the knife and getting a guaranteed crit on them, especially if you have amp on that, which is going to make them take 15% increased damage on top of everything. So the Hot Slugger is just busted, and I would highly recommend getting it. Of course, again, not totally necessary. The build will still perform well with any other high damage per shot weapon, so also snipers will work pretty good with this. So pretty much any other Jacobs that has high damage per shot is going to really shine with this build, but especially single shot shotguns, always really nasty. Hot Slugger is going to be the top of the bar for this build, and it's going to carry you through a lot of content. Now, of course, I can't talk about the build without talking about the ultimate cheese, which is the spread launcher. If you guys don't know about this, I have a whole video posted on it, but essentially this is an alt fire that you can get on any Jacob shotgun, green rarity or better. It's just an alternate firing mode. It's literally an underbarrel grenade launcher that shoots 5 grenades, but they do a stupid amount of damage, and you can mix that with a ton of other things to stack more damage. I always recommend having one of these on the build because if you need to do any kind of speed farming, this is one of the best things in the game to just absolutely one-tap bosses with. So of course, you know, I keep one of those handy, but that's definitely not something you're going to be using for mobbing or ad clearing or anything like that. That's something that's strictly going to be for like cheesing bosses. If you're trying to farm for an item that you know is going to take you a long time, I would recommend having one of those handy. And then of course with the rep kit, we're going with an order amp rep kit, which is essentially going to just be an amp rep kit, but you get 2 charges instead of 1, so you can pop it back to back for 2 amp shots. I know mine doesn't have the perfect roll. You really don't need the perfect roll. As long as it has amp, you're pretty much solid. If you can get an order one with 2 charges, of course that is preferred, but definitely not necessary. For the grenade ordinance, of course, again, I am using my vampiric vivisecting throwing knife with damage amp payload and the penetrator augment. This thing literally took me 15 hours to farm. So if you can't have it, like you can't find it, you can't get it for the build, do not feel bad. You really don't need this. And most of the time for just the mobbing and stuff that I'm doing with the Hot Slugger, I hardly ever throw it anyway. This is mostly to help with your boss cheese. So if you need to milk a boss really fast, you hit him with this. But for mobbing, I'll either just not use grenade ordnance, or I'll swap to something like a cryo jelly. Does really good at mopping up ads. So something like this will work really good too. You do not need the knife. It is just a nice little bonus to have for bossing specifically. And maybe sometimes the bigger enemies that have way more health that you're not killing quite as fast, maybe you don't have all your stuff to proc yet, or something's going on, you need help killing a bigger enemy. That's always nice to have. And then getting into the class mod, this is going to be another really big thing for the build. You're going to need the Dancer class mod, and essentially what this is going to do, you can read it right there, overdrive bonuses are increased by 100%, so they're literally doubled. You get double your overdrive bonuses. Overdrive ends when Rafa's action skill ends, so there is no more dragging your overdrive past your action skill. As long as your action skill is going, you have overdrive, but past that you won't. But during overdrive, your shit's double, which means you have a skill that's doubling your overdrive, and you have your class mod that's doubling it as well, which leads for some crazy overdrive bonuses. Of course, you want to try to get a somewhat decent rolled class mod here. Mine rolled with critical hit damage and action skill cooldown rate. Mine was actually really good because of course that crit damage is huge, plus the action skill cooldown rate is good for making sure your action skills up as much as possible so that you can keep those overdrive bonuses going. For the shield, I know that this is not the best shield I could have been running. I've had people in my chat during stream telling me that I could go get a better one, but I personally like this one, especially for mobbing. This thing is really good for mobbing because it is going to help you clear up tons of mobs really fast. It does a ridiculous amount of damage. This is the fireworks shield that you can get from Splash Zone in the beginning of the game, and on kills it spawns missiles that home in on nearby enemies and deal 7,400 damage each. This thing is busted, dude. It does so much damage, and from what I know, it also scales with Rafa's indirect projectiles, which means if you are built into that, that'll be even crazier. But this thing just helps a ton because you can run into an area, one pump an enemy with the hot slugger. That enemy will instantly spawn a bunch of missiles that'll go and help you kill a bunch of other enemies. So it's not just the enemies you're shooting are dying. Enemies all throughout the room are dying every time you kill an enemy just because of this shield. The reason that I go with a cryo one as well is because I feel like cryo is a really good all-arounder element. It works really good for all kinds of stuff endgame, and a lot of enemies have armor and all kinds of stuff going for them. So I prefer cryo. Of course, you can farm up multiple of these, and depending on where you're at in the game, if you're fighting rippers that are mostly health, you could go for a fire one, but I personally just run cryo for damn near everything. Mine also rolled with spike and missile swarm, which of course these don't matter too much, but they are kind of nice because you get the extra missiles on armor segment break with missile swarm, and if you're getting messed up by dudes hitting you with melee damage, you're going to be doing some damage back to them as well with spike, so it is kind of nice. And then getting into the enhancement, you are going to want a Jacobs enhancement, assuming you are running a Jacobs weapon. So in my case, I'm running the hot slugger. The hot slugger is of course a Jacobs shotgun, so I'm running a Jacobs enhancement. And this is where you could definitely find a better roll than me. I was not lucky. I looked and looked. I didn't find any crazy good rolls for Jacobs enhancements. This was one of the better ones I found. So I rolled with Piercer, which is guns with Jacobs license parts have a 20% chance to grant a crit chance, or a crit hit, sorry, which essentially means even if you miss the crit with a hot slugger, you have a 20% chance for it to still be a crit, which is just kind of nice in general. But then this one rolled with shotgun crit damage is increased by 75%. That right there is huge. So that hot slugger on top of all of our other damage bonuses is going to be dealing an extra 75% bonus critical damage, which is insane. Gun status effect chance, I'm not worried about that. SMG mag size, of course, is garbage, but just that one crit damage roll on the shotgun alone is going to carry this enhancement for me. And of course, that Piercer 20% chance to get a crit even if you miss, that's always really nice. And before I get into the firmware, I will say too, for your other couple of weapons, again, I run a spread launcher and then the hot slugger. Those are my two main weapons I'm running with this build. Of course, an Oscar mic is always fun. It's always fun to just airstrike everything, and it's a really good backup for, say, bossing. If your spread launcher does not hit for as hard as you were hoping it did, or maybe you miss a couple grenades, this thing can generally get the job done afterwards. And for your other weapon, I just have a random blue flat off machine gun that I was doing the cheesy SMG glitch with, just dicking around on stream. So this doesn't really matter. You can put anything here. Mostly the main two things you're going to want, in my opinion, are the hot slugger and pretty much any spread launcher shotgun. So obviously hot slugger is for mobbing. Your spread launcher is going to be for bosses. But of course, I have tested it. If you get all your buffs going, especially if you can kill an enemy or two and get your kill skills procced, and you have your action skill, you have all of your extra bonuses going, this thing will still take absolutely massive chunks out of a boss every time you hit him with it, assuming you have your action skill going and you can get a kill to proc your kill skills. If you can get all these things going, it does chunks of damage with the hot slugger still. You can definitely more than easily kill a boss pretty damn fast with just the hot slugger, but again, nothing's going to beat the spread launcher right now. You can't beat a one tap, so that's your preferred option. But if you really want to and you're not one to like completely cheese bosses, you can still run the hot slugger and still get a ton of damage off on bosses with it, literally no problem. Because not to mention, of course, the hot slugger's entire thing is essentially an extra kill skill that's going to give you 30% extra damage for every kill you get up to 3 stacks. So you can get up to 90% extra damage if you can kill 3 things before you hit a boss. So of course, it's just all these things stack up. If you've got enemies to kill and you got your action skill up, this thing will do ridiculous chunks to bosses on its own, and you can still kill a boss super fast. Now, getting into the actual firmware, one of the big ones you're going to want to try to go for is Deadeye. Now, you're going to want at least 2 hits of this. 3 hits is preferred. I wasn't quite able to min-max mine, but essentially the first tier is going to give you gun accuracy, which is like, that's cool, I guess. The second hit is one of the bigger ones, though, which is just going to give you a flat crit damage increase by 25%. So this alone, if you mix with our enhancement over here, that's a 100%. That's a double the amount increase to our crit hit damage just on those 2 things alone, not to mention all our other skills, right? So that's a big one you're going to want to go for. If you can get the 3rd stack or the 3rd Deadeye firmware on there, that is good too, because you're going to basically get even more critical hit damage stacking for every crit hit you get. So it's absolutely busted if you can get all 3, but at least 2 is going to be your bare minimum because you really want that flat 25% increase. God Killer, this isn't really meant for the build necessarily. I just couldn't really replace it with anything at the time, but this is still an one to have. Lifeblood is another decent one. This is going to be for your survivability. This build does have some survivability built in for the most part. This is always not a bad one to have, so if you do need to pop that rep kit last second, it is going to give you a little bit extra healing, especially if you get 2 tiers of this. You're going to have extra lifesteal and just all kinds of. This is just a really nice survivability one to have. Oscar Mike does not matter whatsoever. We do not care about Oscar Mike. Now, preferably, what I will say is you want to get Goo JFC. So Goo JFC is essentially going to give you action skill cooldown rate, which is going to be really good for keeping your action skill up as much as possible. Action skill damage, which of course is going to help you kill faster and deal more boss damage, and action skill cooldown rate even further by 20%. So in the end, you'd have 30% faster cooldown, and you would do 15% extra action skill damage, which of course Rafa's cannons are already busted as is. So it's really, really nice to have this. But again, I didn't completely min-max my firmware, so it's do as I say, not as I do type beat. So again, the main one you want is Deadeye. Then you're going to want preferably Goo JFC for that extra bonus towards your action skill damage and cooldown. And if you really want to, you can throw some Lifeblood in there. There's plenty of other combinations you could do with your firmware. This is just what I'm running and what I recommend running. Again, this build literally carried me through all endgame content all the way up to UVH 5. I did all the UVH 5 stuff. This build is more than capable of doing all the endgame content with little to no effort, guys. This build is insane, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Again, I have no idea who made this build before me. I have literally no doubt in my mind that somebody already came up with this long before I did. But again, I never one time viewed a video. I never one time did anything like that. I strictly looked at the skill trees, saw that he was capable of doing a lot of single shot damage, and built it all in about 10 minutes on stream. And then we went and kind of gathered some firmware and some items and stuff to help us along the way. So yeah, this is a really good build. Again, this is the one that you could see on my stream. If you want to see it in action a little bit more, you can check some of my streams where I was playing Rafa. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope this helps you out, and I hope you give it a try and maybe min-max it a little more and tell me what you find. Maybe you find a way to get it even more ridiculous than I did. I hope you guys have a blast with it, and just let me know your thoughts down below. If you want to see more content like this, do let me know. I'm not opposed to making more videos like this when I get other characters more endgame. We're currently working on getting our Vex up there on stream, so if you want to go check that out, just keep my channel notifications turned on and you can see whenever we're live, and you can go hop in there and have a good time, talk to people, and enjoy the content. Anyway, again, I love you guys, and I'll catch you later.